Okay. All right. So at the beginning of Sefer Shemos, the Ramban refers specifically to the Mishkan. It's worth referring back to that Ramban, the introduction, because it's very important to understand it, because that's the Ramban's whole understanding of the whole Sefer Shemos. That Ramban, the introduction to Sefer Shemos, he says that the Torah completes Sefer Bereshis, which is the Sefer Yetzirah, the formation, the creation of the world. And after describing what happens to the Avos, to our forefathers, it then goes into the details of their descendants and how and effectively the whole concept of Golus and Geula, so exile and redemption. That's what we have. But then the second paragraph there, right at the beginning of the Sefer, is V'nei Golus einenu nishlam. He says the Golus is not complete. Ad yom shuvam el makomam vel malas avosim yoshavu. You cannot call it the end of exile until the people return to the place they were and to the Milas Avosim. I mean, the original level, the spiritual level of their ancestors. When they left Egypt, even though they left the house of slavery, they were still considered exiles. They were in a land that was not theirs. They were confused in the desert. When they came to Har Sinai, and they made the Mishkan. And Hashem returned and rested his divine presence amongst them. Then they returned to the level of their ancestors. Because the secret of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Sod, this is talking about the secrets of the Torah, was resting upon them. And this is the Merkava, the concept of the Merkava, the heavenly chariot, the vision of Yechezkel, the idea that that's carrying, so to speak, the Shekhinah. And then they were considered to be redeemed. And that's why the Sefer is completed with the completion of the Mishkan, and that the glory of Hashem fills it always. And that's how the conclusion, or basically the conclusion of the Sefer. So the Ramban here is highlighting the fact that to understand properly the Mishkan, you need to understand the concept and the process of Golus and Geula, of exile and redemption. Because the idea is that Geula, to be redeemed, has to be for a purpose. And in the case of the Klal Yisrael, it's interesting. The purpose is actually to return to the level of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, so that the people themselves, right, despite their numerical, the numbers, can attain that level of closeness to Hashem that the Avos attain. So it's almost like a circular. We think of it, Golus and Geula, exile and redemption. But for what purpose? The answer is El Milas Avosom, to get back to the ancestral heritage. And of course, that's something which is immensely difficult, because you're talking about unique, incredible individuals who had that incredible bond with Hashem, right? One family, exactly. And how can that translate into an entire people? And this is where the Ramban has this. This is where he says the idea of the Mishkan comes in, right? And what it's meant to achieve. But he also, if you notice very carefully, he links Har Sinai to the Mishkan. And Har Sinai v'osu ha-Mishkan. They came to Har Sinai and they made the Mishkan. And Hashem returned and rested amongst them. So that's something we're going to see. The Ramban at the beginning of Parshas Terumah, in his introduction to Parshas Terumah, he develops this idea in more detail, right? The idea and the link between Har Sinai and the Mishkan, right? So now let's look at the Ramban at the beginning of the Parsha. And again, it's an introduction. It's before his Pirush on the Psukim. And he says like this, the very first Ramban. When Hashem spoke to the Jewish people, ponim b'fonim, face to face, Aseres HaDibros, the Aseres HaDibros. V'tziva osom alidei Moshe k'tzas mitzvos shem k'moi ovos lemitzvos shel Torah. And through Moshe Rabbeinu, they were commanded to keep some mitzvahs, which are like the ovos, right? They're the ancestors. They're the key categories of the mitzvahs of the Torah. As our Rabbeinu, the Chazal, conducted themselves with Gerim, who come to become Jewish. Same idea. They've got to take on the main categories. Yisrael, Kiblu aleim la'asos kol ma sheyitzavim al yodo shel Moshe, and Yisrael accepted upon themselves to do everything that they were commanded through Moshe Rabbeinu. The Koras in Brisel calls it, and there was a covenant that was made with them. That's the end of last week's parasha, Mishpatim, right? Which describes the bris, the covenant that was made. Now, he is to them as a people, as Hashem. They are to him as a people. And he is to them as a God, as he made the condition with them originally. And now if you listen to my voice, and you guard my covenant, and you shall be for me as a cherished people. Omar, and then it says, you will be to me a mamleches kohanim, a kingdom of priests, and a holy nation. So you see that the bris, the covenant that is made in Har Sinai, and the establishment of that unique bond between Hashem and the Jewish people. The question is, how is that going to manifest itself? Because they are holy, or they are holy, and therefore it's fitting there should be a mikdash that Hashem should rest His divine presence amongst them. And therefore, that's why He commanded first the matter of making the Mishkan. So He should have a house amongst them, sanctified to His name. There He would speak to Moshe and command the Bnei Yisrael. So you see the link between this concept of Mamleches Kohanim v'Goy Kodesh, you shall be a holy people. How? How is that going to actually happen? And the answer is through the Mikdash, through the Mishkan. The Ramban goes further. So that's the broad sense in terms of the whole. The Mishkan as a whole is meant to create that link. But what is the real primary part of the Mishkan? The main desire, the main key component of the Mishkan, it's the place of the resting of the Shechina, which is the Aron. I will make known to you there, and I will speak to you from on top of the kaperes, that's the lid of the Aron. Therefore, and therefore, it puts first the Aron and the kaperes here, because they come first, b'mala, in the sense of their spiritual level. They're first. They are given primacy, and that's why He is told to make them first. That's why the instructions, about making them is put first, even though, as we know, they weren't actually made first. So He's answering a question: why is it that Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu, "V'asuli Aron, you should make me an Aron," when in reality the Aron is only going to be made after they first made the house for the Aron? We know B'tzalel. Chazal have to answer that and say that that's why it's called B'tzalel. But Seil Kel, you were in the shadow of Hashem when He commanded me, and you understood what had to be done and everything else. So this is the reason why it's put first, therefore, says the Ramban, must be to tell us that it was of the highest level. It was the ultimate aim. And then, because you mentioned the Aron, you put the Shulchan and the Menorah because they are kelim, they are vessels like it. And they teach about the inyan of the Mishkan, which was made for their that it was made for them. Moshe Rabbeinu put in Vayakel first the Mishkan, the oil, the cover. And B'tzalel did that first as well, because that was the one that actually came first, that actually was produced first, right? So the Ramban is telling us here that the function of the Mishkan is to create that unique bond between Hashem and the Bnei Yisrael. We are called an Am Kodesh. And how do we become an Am Kodesh? And the answer is by creating that bond with Hashem, which is what the Mishkan achieves, and principally through the Aron. Okay? Then the Ramban goes into the realm of Sod, which is always difficult to understand. It's more Kabbalistic ideas of the Ramban. Ramban often starts with these deep mystical concepts. He often refers to them. And particularly in the context of the Mishkan. The Sod HaMishkan hu, he says the Sod, the secret, in other words, the Kabbalistic idea, the deeper level of the Mishkan is, Sheyihiyah HaKovod, that kovod, that glory, Asher Shochan al Har Sinai, Shochin olav benista, that kovod, which was manifest in public, right, at the revelation at Har Sinai, should rest on it benistar, in a more hidden way, right? So here the Ramban is going to develop the idea that he mentioned in his introduction to the whole of Sefer Shemos, which is about the intrinsic connection of Har Sinai and the Mishkan. He's already mentioned it on the derech of Pshat, the simple explanation, which is that it creates that link and allows us to become and fulfill the covenant, that bris, that you shall be a goy kodesh. The Mishkan allows us to develop that. But on a deeper level, it works like this: is the commotion Hashem, Vayeshkoin kvod Hashem al Har Sinai. Ramban links a number of psukim which seem to clearly show the link between Har Sinai and the Mishkan. It says the glory of Hashem rested on Har Sinai. The positive Devarim, Hey nironu Hashem Elokeinu es kavodo ve'es godlo. You describing Har Sinai, it says in the Sefer Devarim that you have showed us Hashem. Hashem showed us His glory, His greatness. King Kosu b'Mishkan. Similarly, it says the Mishkan, Kavod Hashem Moleis HaMishkan. The glory of Hashem filled the Mishkan. You understand? So that word Kvod Hashem, where does that come from? What does that mean? The glory of Hashem. The answer is, if you look at Matan Torah, you'll see the pasuk. The glory of Hashem rests on Har Sinai. So this is the same thing. It's the same idea. You look closely, you'll see that the words, the honor of Hashem filled the Mishkan, is mentioned twice with the Mishkan. Why? Corresponding to those two words as Kvodo ve'eskodla, His glory and His greatness. There was with the Mishkan, there was always with the Jewish people this glory that was shown to them on Har Sinai. When Moshe came into the Mishkan, the speech, the dibur was to him, which was the same idea which was spoken to him on Har Sinai. As it says about Matan Torah, from heaven, He made you hear His voice to afflict you. In other words, to you understand the seriousness. In other words, to warn you. I think it means in this context. And on the land, He showed you His great fire. Okay. Mishkan, so too in the Mishkan you find the same thing, because it says it says that he heard the voice speaking to him from above the kaperes, from the lid above the lid of the aron, from between the two kruvim, and spoke to him, which spoke to him. So again, he's linking the same ideas. That when Moshe Rabbeinu comes into the Mishkan, what voice does he hear? The voice that was spoken to him in Har Sinai. It's the same thing. It's the same idea. Right? It's the same idea. And that voice that comes from Hashemayim. It doubles these words by daber elov. You'll find them twice in that posuk in Bamidbar, which describes the way Moshe Rabbeinu hears the sound of Hashem's voice. Why is it doubled? Because it tells us, it's teaching this idea that the voice came in Hashemayim to Moshe from above the kaperes, and from there it spoke to him. These obviously deep ideas. It comes min Hashemayim, and it also is heard, and it's heard between the kruvim. You heard His words, you heard from within the fire. And therefore they were both gold. I'm not some way, maybe that corresponds to fire. Somehow, I don't know. It says, I will designate that place there to speak with you, and I will be sanctified with my glory. There will be the designated house for the speaking, for Hashem's communication to Moshe Rabbeinu, and I will be sanctified through my glory. So here you have the Ramban really spelling out the idea that there's a direct parallel between what transpires on Matan Torah, on Har Sinai, at the giving of the Torah, which is the one-off revelation at Sinai, the manifestation of Hashem's presence to the whole people. And that then, the same idea is present always in the Mishkan. That's what the Ramban is saying. And that's the connection. And therefore, it would seem that the way to understand, or one way to understand what the Ramban is trying to convey to us is that if we want to understand properly the importance of the Mishkan, what we really need to do is understand its deep connection to Har Sinai, and to understand that it is Hashem's gift to us. It's Hashem's gift to us as a nation to enable us to forge that connection, which we need in order to realize the closeness of that one-off revelation. Make it not a one-off revelation. These are very deep ideas. Like I said, a lot of what the Ramban describes when it comes to the Mishkan is what we call Sisrei Torah, the secrets of the Torah and the deep and mystical ideas. That's just a couple of other ideas the Ramban discusses. If you look at Perek Chofei Posuk Tes, the Ramban says, the Ramban picks up on these words v'chein tasu. Just before the construction of the Aron, it says, they will make for me a mikdash and I will dwell amongst them. According to everything that I've showed you, the form of the Mishkan, ve'is tabnis kol kelov, and the form of all the kelim, v'chein tasu. Yeah, and so they shall do. What does that mean? What does that mean, v'chein tasu? And there's a lot of discussion as to what exactly this means. So Rashi brings, look at Ramban brings Rashi, v'chein tasu l'doros, and so you shall do, they shall do for future generations. Im yovad echo min hakelim, so you shall do v'chein l'doros. Im yovad echo min hakelim. So Rashi explains that it means if one of the vessels are lost, or when you make the kelim for the Beis Hamikdash, could go in shulchanos or menorahs, the kioros, the shulchan, menorah, the kior, or mechonos, also shlomo. Literally means the machines. These were the various contraptions that Shlomo Melech made in the Mishkan for they were to do with the provision of the water from the kior, I think. Katabnis elu ta'aseh osam. You shall make them in the same way as these. And if the posuk was not connected to the one before it, it should not have written v'chein tasu. It should rather have just written kein tasu. It should have written kein tasu. Why does it say v'chein tasu? And so you shall do. If it said kein tasu, it would have been speaking about the construction of what they were doing now, which is the oil mode and the kelim. In other words, had it meant that, it would have just said, right? As according to everything that I showed you, the conformation of the Mishkan and the kelim, so you shall do v'chein tasu. Why does it add and you shall do? It must be referring to something else. And what is that something else? To rebuild them, reconstruct them if something goes wrong, or we're talking about Shlomo Melech in the Beis Hamikdash. V'lo yodat, this is Lashon Rashi. V'lo yodat, he says, I do not know sheyiyeh ze emes, that this should be true. She's chayav Shlomo la'asos klei beis ulomim ketav nizelu. That Shlomo Melech should be commanded to make kelim the same as these. You'd have to look at the psukim, says the Ramban, and you see that Shlomo Melech made kelim that weren't the same. He made the mizbeach that Shlomo Melech built for the Beis Hamikdash, right, was 20 amos long and 20 amos wide. You know how high that is? We think of the mizbeach as sort of like, oh, it's about that high. Yeah. Huge. Yeah. 20 amos high.
30 foot.
It's very high.
30 foot.
Yeah, it's a house. Yeah, it's a bit more. Yeah. So,
10 meters.
Yeah. So so anyway, the idea is, right, except I'm not sure whether length is height. Is length height? It might not be. It might be length and height. So maybe it was 10 amos high. I have this in my head, it was 10 amos. Maybe not as much. Anyway, okay, needs to be investigated. Either way, it was still high. Either way, it was very high. Either way, it was definitely high, right? Maybe not high 20, it was 70 high. The point is that you see that he made different dimensions, right? So Ibn Ezra has a different pshat, says the Ramban. V'chein tasu hakelim. This, and thus you shall make the kelim. Keep it tchila omar va'osuli mikdash. Because at the beginning it says, they shall make for me a mikdash. So I think maybe the Ibn Ezra is saying, it's saying that this is needed for the kelim. In other words, there's two things. First, it talks about making the Beis Hamikdash itself, right? And now it has to tell you, so they shall do. That means the kelim, the implement. But Al derech hapshat, the Ramban disagrees with both. Al derech hapshat, according to the simple explanation, ain't tzorech v'chol zeh. There's no need for all of this. Avol bo kefa lechizuk v'zirus. He says, you want to understand why the Torah is telling you again, v'chein tasu, and so you shall do, right? So they shall do. Why? because it's coming to be mechazek and to strengthen and to be mezares, to spur them on. They shall make for me a mikdash. Bias v'kenim k'mikdash melech or beis mamlocha. It's a pasuk in Amos. Make this beis hamikdash v'shachanti b'seicham, and I will dwell amongst them. B'vayis b'kisei hakavod asher yasu lisham. In the house and the heavenly throne they shall make for me there. K'choil hashanim areh u'schwa istabnes hamishkan hazeh shamarti she'eshkoin b'seicham ve'istabnes kol kelav. As I showed you all of the form of the Mishkan and all the kelim, the kafal v'chein ta'asu kulchem bizrizos v'chatziros. You know why v'charitzos. You know why it says do it again. It says again, so they shall do. It means you all need to do this. You should all do this with that sense of alacrity, right? That's what it means, right? Make sure you don't neglect it. There's a double phrase you see there as well. They did, so they did. Because it's a command, it says so you shall do. So it's telling them this is very serious. That's the idea according to the Ramban, that it's conveying that it's important to do it with a sense of mission and purpose. And again, to understand this in the context of what the Ramban said before, the idea that the Mishkan is meant to play out in practice the essence of Har Sinai, fits very well.
Yeah.
Because it's also the method of construction, presumably, is meant to develop and instruct on an attitude. How we're supposed to approach it. Like was the idea. Construct it in a way of zrizos. Now, the next Ramban, we'll see the next one as well. Va'asu aron. What is the fact that it says va'asu aron? They shall make the aron. So who is they? Yachsel b'nei Yisrael is korim l'malo. It's talking about the b'nei Yisrael we mentioned before. But afterwards it says, if you look carefully, the Ramban picks up on the fact that there's a very strange shift in the terminology with the aron. Do you see this? We look at the pasuk. Also, look at the psukim. They shall make an aron and say shitim. V'tzipisa also, and you shall cover it with gold. V'yotzakto lo, and you shall pour the 4 rings. So why did the shift? They, and then it shifts to you. Why is the shift? So he says, that's all in the singular. So the Mechilta says that the reason is, the Medrash says, because Moshe Rabbeinu corresponds to all of the Klal Yisrael. But he says, it could be that it hints that all of Klal Yisrael should be mishtatfin, join in, ba'asiyas ha'aron, in the construction of the aron, ba'avur shul kodosh mishkanei elyon, because it is sanctified, it is holy, mishkanei elyon, dwelling place of Hashem on high, who dwells on high, right? So all of Klal Yisrael join in that creation. V'sheyizku kulam laTorah, that they should all merit and be zocha to the Torah itself. Very profound thing he's saying here. That really Moshe Rabbeinu is making the aron, but it starts off with the words va'asu aron, and they shall make the aron. Why? Because when it comes to the aron, which represents the Torah itself, this is for all of us. We all make it. All of Klal Yisrael. So it says why with all the kelim does it say, and you shall make about aron kaseh va'asu aron, and they shall make an aron? Everyone should come and join aron, so that they shall merit the Torah. And what is that involvement? That they should each donate 1 item of gold, a kli of gold for the aron, or they should help B'Tzalel a little bit in some way, or they should have kavanah. They should have kavanah. They should intend. They should have that kavanah, have that direction, at least in their minds in some way. This mass participation is played out in different ways. But the main idea the Ramban is saying is that it has to be va'asu aron. It's not enough, right? With the other kelim, you can say va'asisa chapor, va'asisa shulchan, right? You make, not with the aron. But the aron has to be a communal endeavor. And the final Ramban I just want to show you is on the shulchan, Chofei Posuk Chof Daled. Chof Daled, the Ramban Posuk Chof Daled. Zer Zahov. Zer Zahov Soviv. Why? What is the purpose and the function of this crown of gold that surrounds the shulchan. You shall cover it with gold, and you shall make for it a zer is like a. Well, there's a discussion I think about it. It's a crown basically around the rim of the aron. Simon Kesem Malchus says the Ramban. This is a sign for the crown of royalty. Shal shulchan shom osher gedulahu. This is where wealth and greatness is in a material sense. Shulchan Malachim. Lashon Rashi. You know, they should word phrase Shulchan Malachim, the table of kings. And he says this is the case. Shezeh Sod HaShulchan, because this is the secret of the Shulchan. He birkas Hashem, because the blessing of Hashem me'esa yosa olam lo nivra yesh me'ayin. Since the creation of the world, the word concept of creation only exists in creation, right? What if you have the concept of bara, bria. Bria is yesh me'ayin, it's something from nothing. But after the world is created, there is no something from nothing. Everything comes from something, right? Aval olam kamin hago noye. Ever since the world is created, the world proceeds as Hashem sets it in motion, and that means something from nothing doesn't happen, right? Because it's always got to be. We have unique, miraculous events, but those are exceptions. The world goes according to its minhag. Hashem saw everything that was created, and it was perfectly good. But once you have the root of something, once you have the beginning of something, bracha can rest on it, and it can increase. Yeah, Haftarah Parshas Vayero, right? You know, when Elisha says, "Tell me, what do you have in your house?" And she says, "I have nothing other than osuch shemen. I have a small jar of oil." And with that, Elisha creates the miracle. So there's pouring oil, flowing oil. Why? Because there's something, and from the something can create more. Because there was a jar of oil, so that allowed bracha to come and all the other kelim. We find the same Eliyahu, kada kemach lekolsa, v'tzibichas Hashem lechosa. Again, the same thing. There is some food there. There's something, and therefore, miraculously, more is created. You understand this idea in the Shulchan, he says, that is the concept of the lechem haponim. What is the lechem haponim? The showbread. Bo tochel bracha. The bracha rests on them. And that's how the
Satiates.
Yeah, that satiates the whole of Klal Yisrael. When it came to the korbanos, any kohen even just received a bean from a tiny amount from the korbanos, he was happy, he was full, right? So what the Shulchan is meant to represent is the concept, it would seem, of material wealth, and the idea being that there's a kernel there, and it seems what the Ramban, there's a kernel there, because that's what the Shulchan does. What is on the Shulchan? Loaves, right? The loaves are not enough, it would seem, for everyone. There's only going to be a finite amount of loaves. Actually, I think that Chazal is about the lechem haponim. Kol kohen shemagio kapol. Yeah, any kohen who received a tiny amount from the lechem haponim was happy, was filled, right? So it would seem that the message, or one of the key ideas behind the Shulchan, is the idea that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can create immense bracha from anything. So this is the idea. That's what the Shulchan represents. Yeah, in a sense, it's conveying the concept of bitochen, right? The idea that you can have something and it can become so much greater. There's something needs to be there. That's what the message is. The creation, you have siyush me'ayin, right? The 6 days of the creation, you have nothing. Something comes from nothing. The Shulchan represents the rest of the world and how the world works, and that lesson is that everyone who sees and comes into contact with the Shulchan sees those 12 loaves of bread. And the message is, from there, HaKadosh Baruch Hu create as much bracha as everyone needs. That's the idea. That's the question. And therefore teaching us the concept of bitachon and trusting in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, we'll leave it there. Have a very good Shabbos. Okay.